and let the good people know what it is that we are doing today. Now, some of you may have actually seen, okay, we're live on YouTube. Hi, YouTube. Welcome to the Lurie Daniel Favorite Show experience. You guys are getting a mini clip today. Not on YouTube yet? Maybe. Okay, whatever. You guys, well, YouTube is going to get a mini clip today. And the mini clip is basically, we're going to do probably 2 lives today. We may, as I told the Urban View audience, we may even have an example of the Fragile Whites. But today's first clip, or first live that we're going to discuss, because I know the Fragile Whites gets people very excited. But today, first, I want to tell you all about something that is very concerning to me as somebody who is a mother and someone who firmly believes in birth control. I shared with the Urban View audience that my doctor called me today to my doctor's office to remind me that I have a mammogram appointment today, which I'm super excited about because you got to protect the girls. You got to protect your life. But I believe firmly in birth control. And I'm in that weird phase where technically perimenopausal-ish, but like not nearly close enough to the end of the perimenopause into actual menopause to be feeling safe about birth control, because I got way too many sister friends. We are in like our mid to late 40s, and people be thinking that they are done having children, and then boom, I got nieces and nephews who are like 2 years old. Meanwhile, we also got kids who are going off to college. So I firmly believe in birth control, and I believe in Planned Parenthood, not just the corporate or not just the nonprofit, but the idea that we should be planning our parenting, right? We should be planning for these things because children are human beings, and you should not put more thought and care into whether or not you are going to buy a puppy than you do into whether or not you're going to have a child. Like, and sometimes we approach childhood as, oh, it's a blessing, it's a miracle. I mean, maybe, like, but if I dropped a puppy off at your house right now, would that be a blessing and a miracle, or would it be a mess? Would it be something that you would have to deal with, that you would rather not have to deal with at this time? If pregnancy is that for you, then we should also create a space where we can say, yeah, but not today. Not today. Now, y'all know I do believe in abortion because I know that the history of humanity includes the fact that women all across the planet, ever since women have been women, have had to use the environment around us to strategically time our pregnancies. Like if you are a part of a nomadic community and the nomadic community got to go into hunting season, child, this ain't time for you to be 3 months pregnant, throwing up all over the damn place. You better go out and get you one of them juices and berries and take care of that because you can have another pregnancy later on. Now, I know my religious folks are going to say things like, Lurie, I can't believe that you, a Christian, born and raised in the black church, would ever suggest that all children are not a blessing from God. That's not what I'm saying. All children are indeed a blessing from God. They just may not need to come through your vagina. Like if your vagina is not in an environment where you have the capacity to provide for that human, you don't have the capacity to give them access to food and healthcare, love, emotional support, then you should probably not have a child come through your vagina right now. And I truly believe in the God of the universe, which lets me know that if the being that was in your womb is supposed to be here, it's a whole ass 8 billion other vaginas I guess if there's 8 billion people on the planet, it's at least 4 billion other vaginas that being could come through and fulfill its mission and destiny here on this earth. It ain't got to come through you, especially if you're poor and broke and can't afford the kids you already have. I think we just need to normalize having factual conversations about pregnancy, which is one of the reasons why I'm doing this mini live right now, because Donald Trump is threatening to cut access to birth control for millions of women, mainly because they're poor. And I don't know about you, but I'm old enough to remember back when teen pregnancy was a whole ass thing. And like, I was telling Jonah, poor Jonah was like being born when I was graduating high school. And I was telling Jonah, literally, because there was an engineer in here trying to fix something before I came in, and they said something about the 90s. And I was like, oh yeah, 94, that's when I was in high school. And this one little engineer mug got the nerve to be like, that's when I was being born. I was like, really? You really had to say that? But the reason I'm very concerned about this is because y'all remember Tupac, Brenda's got a baby, but Brenda's barely got a brain. The damn shame. The girl can hardly spell her name. Remember that? Like Tupac had a whole ass song about Brenda having babies and childhood pregnancies and how this was a problem. Peace out to Tupac. And I know he's complicated, but still, he was on a poster on my wall, so do with that what you will. But basically, we had an entire era where teenage pregnancy was like a real serious thing. And then there was a lot of education that went into lowering the rate of people who were having children as teens, because what was also happening was you had a lot of girls who were having children, but they were being impregnated by grown-ass men, right? So in addition to expanding access to birth control, we also began having different conversations within our girlhood spaces about, ooh, he a dirty old nasty-ass man. Now, keep in mind, this is also the R. Kelly era, so grown-ass men coming to high school and picking up little girls was like a thing. It was like a whole-ass thing. And now contraception is now a fundamental part of our life. I mean, thank God me and my IUD go together forever. I love the NuvaRing. I love the birth control. I love all of it because I believe in Planned Parenthood. Now, if withdrawal is all you got, you should at least be withdrawing effectively. There's a wonderful book called Challenging the Myths of Our Fertility. For those of you who want to do the withdrawal method, I mean, there's a science to knowing your body. I mean, it's possible. You can also have a lot more babies that way, but I believe in birth control, whatever works for you. Birth control has been a normalized part of our life, but birth control is something very new. We only got access to it in the 1970s. Like, if you were a married woman in this country, you were not legally allowed to use contraception. You could not prevent yourself from being pregnant until the Supreme Court decision in 1965 called Griswold versus Connecticut. After that, in 1970, Congress created this law called Title X. Now, Title X was enacted under the Nixon administration, and it basically ensured that poor people were going to be able to get access to contraception if you needed it. And in 1969, July 1969, Nixon writes, quote, "It is my view that no American woman should be denied access to family planning assistance because of her economic condition." Because basically only wealthy people were able to stop having babies when they wanted to. Poor people, you had to skeet the baby out anytime you got skeeted in, because there was no access to birth control for you. And it wasn't like you had a whole bunch of condoms at the CVS that you could go to. And quite frankly, a whole lot of men ain't know a whole lot about using condoms effectively. So the stories go. Okay, do with that information what you will. The program Title X has been in existence ever since 1969. And in 2025, Congress had a $285 million budget in Title X funds. I'm sorry. I may have said Title VI earlier. I meant to say Title X. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is because there have been some inclinations from the Trump administration, some indications rather, that they are attempting to destroy access to this particular funding to prevent unwanted pregnancies. According to NPR, a group of 15 public health organizations is now suing the Trump administration. They're arguing that the federal government has, quote, jeopardized access to services, including birth control, for more than 800,000 people due to the illegal withholding of Title X dollars. And they go on to describe a number of the organizations that are suing. And they're suing because their Title X funding got cut because of wokeness. According to one of the directors, Stephanie McDowell, who is the Bridger Care, she's in charge of an organization known as Bridger Care in Montana. And she says that basically the reason that their funding was cut was after they got this letter. That in the letter, they were citing that the organizations, the nonprofits, were using wokeness. They were using anti-racism, statements that would commonly be understood as DEI, according to McDowell. She says that basically on their website, they have language that says, "We welcome people of different identities, teens, LGBTQ plus individuals, survivors of sexual assault." They didn't even mention race. But that was too much for this fragile administration. It's the fragilest, widest administration we ever have seen. And basically, they had sent out these letters that said, we're going to cut your funding. You're not going to get access to funding, in addition to cutting the funding for Planned Parenthood as a part of the big bitch-ass bill. According to Shireen Gorbani, who is the interim director of Planned Parenthood Association in Utah, she says people are already living paycheck to paycheck in these communities. We are not able to count on the federal government to keep the promises it made to access low-cost care and to plan and space their families. Basically, if you are already poor and you cannot afford birth control and you've just been cut off from your access to birth control because of the big bitch-ass bill making cuts to Medicaid, and your president is building a $200 million ballroom in a house he's supposed to be leaving in 3 years, make it make sense. Make it make sense. Now, according to the report, it's not just Title X funds that are jeopardizing access to the resources. According to Kimmy Chernoby, who's an attorney with the National Women's Law Center, quote, she points to cuts in Medicaid included in the Republican spending bill, which jeopardizes access to health care, including contraception, for millions of women. So it wasn't just the Medicaid that was getting cut. It wasn't just the housing programs that are getting cut. It was also the substantive programs that were going to allow poor people to have access to birth control. Now, according to the report, the other challenge that we're having is that we have to examine all of this in light of the fact that, as noted in the article, that they are really trying to expand the population for white women. They want more white women having babies. Now, there's plans for our babies because they're cutting off birth control for everybody. But there are plans for our babies, which include jail and prison labor. Like, we already seen that because that's what they're already doing. That's why this whole effort that Donald Trump is engaging in right now to not just flood black cities, black-led cities as well with policing, they're also attempting to lower the age of adult criminal prosecution down to 14 years old. When I was 14 years old, I was actually being arrested for some shit that I was involved in. I had no business being involved in because I was a wild-ass teenager. I wasn't causing violence to anybody, but I was doing some shit I wasn't supposed to be doing. According to them, I should have been charged as an adult. for my minor little ass doing some minor bullshit ass things. And they basically have decided that they want to lower the age for adulthood down to 14 years old. Not just so that they can jail our kids, which we're going to talk about in the next live that I do in about half an hour, but also so that they can lower the age of consent for marriage. We talked about this case coming out of Utah, where the state senator basically changed the law around the age of consent in Utah because he had a family member who was 18 years old and still technically in high school who was raping a 13-year-old little middle school girl. And they changed the law because that family member of this state senator was going to be facing big time because he was going to be charged as an adult. So in Utah, they changed the law so that this white man's relative could continue raping this little girl and would not face criminal felony charges, just a misdemeanor, a slap on the wrist. So it's not even that they're lowering the age of adulthood and consenthood down to 14 so that they can jail our children, but also so that little Jenny can get married at a much earlier age and begin producing babies for all those white Christian nationalist men who don't believe that little Jenny should be voting at all, but they do believe she should be spreading her legs wide for that big old nasty man to skeet on in it so she can push out as many babies as possible. This is your country. This is your country. So we are now seeing this whole effort from the anti-abortion people who are basically doing everything they can to limit access to contraception, to ban abilities for women to not have pregnancies complete themselves, and to essentially lower the age of consent so that when they're violating you or when they're perhaps doing, imagine this. Imagine you are best friends with a pedophile. And that pedophile has planes and islands, and he's very, very rich, and he's able to take all these girls, these young 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old girls, and they massage you. They open up for violations. You just get able to violate them whenever time you want to. Wouldn't it be interesting? Wouldn't it be a thing if you could change the law so that all the girls and boys who were children that you sexually assaulted were no longer considered minors? Because you lowered the age of consent. You're lowering the age of adulthood so that you can arrest our kids, but you lower the age of consent for yours so that you can have all access to all the Teen USA and pageants and all the teenage bodies you can get. These people are freaky and weird in the worst ways possible. And this is now how they are weaponizing access to birth control to continue their efforts to basically ensure that white women continue having babies and that black people and Latino people and other non-white people who have babies will continue providing slave labor. Y'all may think I'm being hyperbolic, but ain't it crazy how the most hyperbolic of us be right? And the shit that we say be happening. I don't know. Do with that what you will. We got to go ready to go to commercial break. Urban View on the other side of it, Sharia Smith and I will be having a conversation about what's happening with the state of affairs and as it pertains to the Department of Education and the firings, the mass firings that are going to completely disrupt our ability to go back to school with our children in effective ways. We got a lot to get to. And YouTube, stay tuned. I may or may not be back before tomorrow. I'm told the fragile